Let me ask you something before we even get into this. At what point do we stop pretending we're shocked? Because if you've been paying attention, you already knew this day was coming. You just didn't know it was going to land this hard, on this many people, on this one Tuesday. A new bombshell complaint just dropped in federal court, and let me tell you, it didn't tiptoe in. It kicked the door down, through the furniture, and started naming names like it was reading off a guest list. And we're going to get into every single name, every single line of that filing, every single whisper that surrounded it. So buckle in, because this one isn't a rumor. This one is paperwork. If you haven't heard yet, the headline making rounds right now is wild. Sean Combs. Yes, that's Sean Combs, the same one currently behind bars, is allegedly behind a 213-page federal complaint that drags in some of the biggest names in entertainment, tech, and politics. We're talking Beyoncé. We're talking Rihanna. We're talking Jay-Z, Drake, Kanye, Kim Kardashian, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, Michael Jordan, Jeff Bezos, Kylie Jenner, T.D. Jakes, Joe Biden. And if your jaw isn't already on the floor, the United Nations is also listed as a defendant. The United Nations. Let that sit on your tongue for a second. Now, before anyone in the comments rushes to type, "That can't be real," let me slow you down. The filing was first surfaced by the legal insider account known as Inner City Press, which posted a screenshot stating, and I quote loosely, that the Southern District of New York had just transferred a 213-page complaint filed on behalf of Sean Combs, naming the UN as a defendant, with a tag at the end that simply read, "Big if true." 3 words. Big if true. That's the kind of phrasing a court reporter uses when even they don't have the bandwidth to process what they just read. So pause with me here. Diddy is sitting in a federal facility. He's not exactly running around filing his own legal documents. And yet, his name is on the paperwork. Allegedly. Which means one of two things. Either someone close to him is moving on his behalf with his blessing, or someone is doing it without his permission and his camp has been suspiciously quiet about it. No denial. No, this is not us. No, we did not authorize this. And in this industry, silence is a confession with better lawyers. Let's talk about why this matters. When Diddy was originally indicted, the Department of Justice made one thing crystal clear. They said, and you can pull the indictment up yourself, that Combs leaned on the employees, the resources, and the influence of a multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in, and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Members and associates. Plural. The feds said it out loud. They just never told the public who those associates were. And for over a year, the entire internet has been holding its breath waiting for that list to drop. Well, surprise. The list is dropping. And it's not dropping from a journalist. It's not dropping from a whistleblower. It's allegedly dropping from the man himself. Now, why would Diddy do this? Why would he, sitting in a cell with appeals still pending, with parole conversations still on the table, throw the entire A-list under a moving freight train? Because if he goes down, he is not going down alone. That's the energy. That has always been the energy. And anyone who has watched this man operate for the last 30 years knew, deep down, that if the cage door ever swung shut behind him, he was going to start naming names like a man with nothing left to lose. Because at this point, he doesn't. He really doesn't. But here's where it gets layered. Word on the street, and I'm saying word on the street because nobody has confirmed this on paper, is that Diddy didn't put his own signature on the complaint. He had a proxy file it for him. And the reason is almost elegant in a sinister kind of way. If he files it himself, every single name on that list knows exactly who pulled the trigger, and every single one of them has the motive, the money, and the means to make sure he never walks out of that prison upright. But if a third party files it, he can shrug. He can play surprised. He can say, "I had no idea who would do such a thing," while the entire industry burns down around him. It's plausible deniability with a paper trail. And honestly, that's Diddy energy. That's exactly the kind of move the man would make. We've seen him operate. We know the playbook. Now, let's bring it back to the two names that have everybody actually losing sleep, Rihanna and Beyoncé. Because the moment those two names hit the filing, the entire conversation shifted. People stopped laughing. People stopped joking. Because suddenly, a story that had been simmering on the back burner for months started to make a terrifying amount of sense. Rewind a few weeks. A clip surfaces online. A prison phone call. And in this call, a voice that sounds an awful lot like Sean Combs is heard speaking to someone identified as his son, Christian Combs. And the conversation in that recording? It is something else. The voice says, and I'm going to read it the way it played. "Puff, what's up? Are you listening? Do not entertain none of this nonsense and nothing over the phone. I'm going to need you to get rid of all the leftover pizza boxes. All the boxes left over from the pizza. All the boxes. Make sure you recycle the plastic like we talked about. And the response on the other end? All right. Yeah. Now. When that clip first leaked, half the internet said it was AI. Generated. Manipulated. Fake. The other half said, wait a second. Why hasn't anyone denied it? Because here's the thing. And pay attention to this. Because this is the part most people glossed over. When audio gets faked involving a federal inmate of Diddy's caliber, the feds tend to swat that down within hours. They don't sit on it. They don't let it breathe. They put out a statement, the prison puts out a statement, the legal team puts out a statement, and the story dies. But this time, crickets. Not from the Bureau of Prisons. Not from the DOJ. Not from Diddy's lawyers. Not from his publicists. Not from his family. A wall of silence that big around a clip that explosive? That silence is doing some heavy lifting. So what is the pizza? Because that's the question. What does pizza mean in that recording? Now, your first instinct, if you've been online for more than 5 minutes since the Epstein files surfaced, is to assume pizza is the same coded language used in those circles to reference minors. That's where most people went immediately, and you can't blame them. That association is baked into the modern internet vocabulary at this point. But here's the twist, and this is the theory currently catching fire across legal commentary spaces. The pizza in this conversation may not be people Diddy was exploiting. The pizza may be the people he was in business with. The associates. The partners. The names on a list. The leftover slices. The evidence. The receipts. The boxes that needed to disappear before someone could connect the toppings back to the chef. Think about it from his angle. He doesn't say file. He doesn't say folder. He doesn't say client. He says pizza, a word casual enough to slide past a prison phone monitor on the first listen, but specific enough that anyone on the receiving end already knows exactly what's being asked of them. That is not the language of a panicked man. That is the language of a man who has done this before, who has a system in place, and who is calmly activating that system from inside a cell. And if that's true, if the pizza is the business partners, then get rid of all the leftover pizza boxes takes on a meaning that should make every name in that 213-page filing reach for a passport and a one-way ticket. Because, and this is where the timing gets ugly, right around when that recording surfaced, Rihanna was nearly killed. Let me say that again. Rihanna was nearly killed. In her own home. By a woman who, according to reports, drove all the way from Florida to Los Angeles, parked outside Rihanna's residence, and opened fire. The woman has since been publicly identified as Ionna Ortiz. And the bullets. This is the detail that should give you chills. The bullets actually pierced the Airstream trailer on the property. The Airstream where Rihanna and her children were reportedly inside at that exact moment. She didn't switch zip codes. She didn't change neighborhoods. She didn't post a sad little Instagram story about feeling unsafe. She left the state. She vanished. She moved her entire family to an undisclosed location and went so quiet that the only confirmation we got was through people close to her camp. Now ask yourself, when has Rihanna ever been quiet? When has Rihanna ever been the type to disappear off the map? She doesn't do quiet. So if she's doing quiet now, something or someone bigger than a random fan with a gun spooked her. And the working theory, the one circulating through every group chat in the industry right now, is that she ran because she figured out who really sent that woman to her door. And that name allegedly starts with a J and ends with a Z. Now, before anyone clutches their pearls, let me clarify, none of this is confirmed. Not in court, not in writing, not on the record. This is the rumor mill running at full speed. But here's what I will say. When you start lining up the timeline, the prison recording, the pizza box reference, the planned attack on Rihanna, the sudden filing of a 213-page lawsuit naming her, naming Beyoncé, naming Jay-Z, that's not coincidence. That's choreography. That is a perfectly timed, perfectly sequenced unraveling. And whoever is conducting it, whether it's Diddy himself or someone moving the chess pieces around him, knows exactly what they're doing. Now I want to talk about Beyoncé. Because Beyoncé's situation is its own monster, and it deserves its own breakdown. Apparently, and this part has been whispered for over a year now, in green rooms, in group chats, in the kind of conversations that happen in private and never make it to a microphone. Beyoncé may not have even known the half of what Jay-Z was allegedly involved in alongside Diddy. The narrative that's been building in the underground is that Jay didn't just keep her in the dark. He pulled her into that world before she even had the maturity to understand what she was being pulled into. She was 16. 16. The age gap conversation around that relationship is a separate 2-hour video. But the point is, people are now claiming she was being shaped, controlled, conditioned from a teenager, And only in the last few years has she started to see the full picture and quietly plan her exit. And if you've watched her body language in interviews over the last decade, watch the way her smile tightens when his name comes up. Watch the way she's slowly built her empire to stand entirely on its own legs without needing his. Then this theory doesn't sound like fan fiction. It sounds like a woman who has been silently constructing a getaway car for years. And speaking of exits, divorce. Yes, divorce. The rumor that refuses to die. We've heard it before, we've all rolled our eyes before, but this time something feels different. This time the timing lines up. This time, sources are speaking with a kind of confidence we haven't heard before. And if you've been paying attention to Beyoncé's release schedule over the last 2 years, you already noticed something was off. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, drops content the way she's been dropping content unless they're trying to stack a war chest. Let's run through it. The Ivy Park line with Adidas. The Renaissance album. A global tour. A theatrical film just weeks after the tour ended. A hair care line. Cowboy Carter. A perfume line. A liquor brand. The NFL halftime stage. And then another tour. 2 years. All of that in 2 years. Not even peak-era Beyoncé was moving at that velocity. So when the popular commentator Storm Monroe came out and said his sources close to her camp were telling him she was racing to bag every dollar she could grab before the storm hit, that didn't sound far-fetched anymore. That sounded like a battle plan. Storm laid it out plainly. He said the reason they're already living separate lives, the reason we are about to witness one of the most expensive divorces this industry has ever processed, is because Jay-Z is next on the chopping block. Diddy was the first domino. Jay is the second. And no amount of money, no amount of legal muscle, no amount of PR firepower is going to be enough to plug the hole once this dam breaks. He said she knows it. Jay knows it. And the only question left is which receipt drops first, which witness breaks first, which lawsuit lands first, and which story turns out to be the one that finally ends the empire. He also predicted, and pay attention to this part, that when the divorce announcement comes, it won't even feel like an announcement. It'll be a quiet statement through the publicist. Something polished. Something rehearsed. The Carters have been separated for some time. They've built a beautiful life together. They remain committed co-parents. Blah, blah, blah. A clean, sterile, legally vetted breakup designed to protect the bag first and the feelings second. Because at the end of the day, that household runs on business logic. Always has. Always will. And then, because the universe loves dramatic timing. Remember when Diddy first got locked up and the internet went into a coordinated meltdown? A few days into that, an industry insider known as NT Lawyer dropped a tweet that made every blog freeze mid-typing. The tweet said Jay-Z had, on the same day, sat down with 2 separate attorneys. One was a divorce lawyer. The other was a criminal defense lawyer. 2 lawyers. One day? Read that again. He wasn't covering one base. He was covering both bases. The divorce lawyer was reportedly because Beyoncé was already moving towards separation to keep her name far away from whatever was about to surface. The criminal defense lawyer? Well, you don't sit down with a criminal defense attorney unless you suspect, deep down, that someone is about to come looking for you. You don't pay that retainer for fun. You don't book that consult for curiosity. You book it because something in your past is starting to make noise, and you need a professional in the room before that noise turns into a knock on your door. And that little detail, that one little tweet, has been quietly circling the industry like a vulture ever since. So let's put the entire picture together, because we owe ourselves the full mosaic. You have a man, Diddy, sitting in federal custody, surrounded by mounting evidence, facing a literal mountain of civil lawsuits, with the DOJ openly stating he didn't act alone. You have a prison call leaking, in which he allegedly instructs his son to dispose of pizza boxes. You have a near-fatal attack on Rihanna in her own home. You have Rihanna fleeing the state, not the neighborhood. You have a 213-page complaint allegedly filed on behalf of Diddy, naming the most powerful entertainers, tech moguls, athletes, religious figures, and politicians on the planet, plus the United Nations. You have his team refusing to deny the filing. You have Jay-Z reportedly meeting with both a divorce lawyer and a criminal lawyer in the same sitting. You have Beyoncé dropping product after product after product like a woman racing the clock. You have whispers of a divorce that this time, finally, sounds real. And every single piece of this puzzle was placed within a span of less than 18 months. That's not chaos. That is design. Now, let me play devil's advocate for a second, because I owe you that. Could some of this be exaggerated? Of course. Could the lawsuit be a prank filing by some random person trying to attach themselves to the Diddy circus? It's possible. Court records have seen wilder. Could the pizza recording be a clever piece of AI? It's possible. Could Rihanna's attacker have just been a random, unhinged stranger with no ties to anything bigger? It's possible. Could Beyoncé's release schedule be nothing more than a woman who just really loves working? Sure, possible. But here's my question, and I want you to really sit with this one. When does the weight of possible stop being lighter than the weight of probable? When do all these isolated coincidences become too perfectly aligned to be isolated anymore? Because right now, with this many threads weaving back to the same center, the burden of proof isn't on the people connecting the dots. The burden of proof is on the people still trying to insist there are no dots. One reader online said it best. They wrote, "Diddy has something on every single one of them. They really thought they could play this man like he wouldn't talk." Another one said, "He has them all on tape. That's why he's naming names. Because he can prove it." And whether you believe those takes or not, the energy is the same. The public, the audience, the witnesses watching this unfold are no longer in the mood to give the benefit of the doubt to anyone whose name appears on that filing. The era of celebrity invincibility is cracking. You can hear it cracking. And the people most exposed by those cracks are the same people who, just 2 years ago, were considered untouchable. So let me ask you the question I came here to ask. What do you actually believe? Do you believe Diddy is finally pulling the curtain down on everyone he came up with because he refuses to be the only one in a cell? Do you believe Rihanna's attack was random? Or do you believe she ran because she figured out it wasn't? Do you believe Beyoncé is exiting Jay because she finally got tired? Or because she saw the bus coming and didn't want to be on it when it hit the wall? And do you believe, really believe, that a 213-page document just happened to drop, naming half the most powerful people on this planet plus a global governing body, with absolutely no signal from the man at the center of it? Because I'll tell you what I believe. I believe nothing about this is random. I believe every name on that list is sweating tonight. I believe Rihanna is in a country most of us couldn't find on a map. I believe Beyoncé already has the divorce papers drafted, just waiting for the right news cycle. And I believe Diddy, sitting in his cell, is finally getting comfortable, because for the first time in his life, he's the one holding the pen, the paper, and the people's attention all at once. This is the kind of story that doesn't end with a tweet. This is the kind of story that ends with subpoenas, congressional hearings, sealed indictments, and the kind of red carpets nobody walks anymore. This is the moment the industry has been pretending wouldn't come. And it's here. And it has paperwork. And it has timestamps. And it has names. And the most chilling part, the part that should make every single person watching this lean a little closer, is that we're not even at the climax yet. This is still the build. This is the part of the movie where the music starts swelling and you realize the calm scenes you watched in the first hour weren't calm at all. They were set up. Every product launch was set up. Every silent red carpet was set up. Every cryptic Instagram caption was set up. And the names on that filing aren't the punchline. They're the cast list for what comes next. So tell me, and I want to hear all of you on this one, drop it in the comments. Who do you think is going down next? Who do you think Diddy is most desperate to take with him? Whose name on that 213-page document do you think is the one keeping a private jet fueled and on standby tonight? And do you actually believe Rihanna and Beyoncé were dragged into something they couldn't see the bottom of? Or are they playing the same game everyone else is, just better, just quieter, just smarter at hiding the receipts? I'm reading every comment, so don't be shy with the takes. The wilder the better. The pettier the better. The more receipts you bring, the more I'll engage. This is the kind of story that the comment section was made for, and I trust you all to put the pieces together faster than half the people getting paid to cover this. And while you're down there in that comment section, do me a favor. Go ahead and check out the other story I dropped earlier this week, because it ties into all of this in a way you're not going to expect. And once you see how the pieces connect, you're going to come right back here screaming. There's a thread between these stories that nobody is talking about loud enough, and I want you to be the one who spots it before the mainstream catches up. Because that's the thing about this industry. By the time the major outlets are willing to put it in print, it's already 3 lawsuits and 2 settlements too late. The people who actually figured out what was happening figured it out from places exactly like this one, in conversations exactly like this one, in comment sections exactly like the one you're about to scroll down to. So here's my final thought, and I'm going to leave you with it. Whoever filed that 213-page complaint, whoever pressed record on that prison call, whoever sent a woman from Florida to Los Angeles with a weapon and an address, whoever quietly walked Beyoncé into a divorce attorney's office, every single one of those moves was made by someone who knew that the public was finally ready to hear it. That's the part that gives me chills. We are the audience these moves were calibrated for. They knew we were watching. They knew we were paying attention. They knew the era of looking away was over. And now the curtain isn't being pulled back gently. It's being yanked off the rod. So watch closely. Take notes. Trust nothing on its surface. And whatever you do, do not forget the names that just got read into the record tonight. I'll be waiting. Stay alert out there. Stay loud in the comments. And as always, protect your peace, watch your circle, and don't ever let anybody convince you the truth isn't worth waiting for. We'll see what tomorrow drops. Talk soon. And remember, nothing about this story is finished, nothing about it is settled, nothing about it is safe to ignore, and nothing about the people involved is as untouchable as they once truly believed. Stay tuned.